Next up, we're thrilled to be able to discuss a new film just released on DVD called Neo-Ned, a raw, risk-taking film that plays like no romance you've ever seen before, featuring two powerhouse performances from Jeremy Renner and Gabrielle Union, and delicate and insightful direction from Van Fisher. Neo-Ned has won over festival audiences and swept awards from Palm Beach to Sarasota. This challenging and inspiring gem of a movie, which also stars Carrie Elwes and Sally Kirkland, has received raves from the critics as well. John Anderson of Variety hails the picture's atmosphere, humanity, and fantastic drama, while Mark Olson of the LA Times calls the film surprising and engaging. Tonight we are honored to be joined by the director of Neo-Ned, Mr. Van Fisher, and its star, Jeremy Renner, who has delivered a slew of unforgettable performances from his title role in The Chilling Dahmer to terrific films like The Assassination of Jesse James, 28 Weeks Later, and I don't think I wrote Saw, and that's not one of the films that is right. I have no idea, but he's done some terrific work. I'm sorry about that. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the show Mr. Van Fisher and Mr. Jeremy Renner. Let me bring them both up. Jeremy and Van, are you both with us?
I'm here. Man, I'm here.
What's up, man?
Hey, Jeremy, long time.
Thank you both for being with us tonight. It's a great pleasure to speak to you both.
Thank you for having us.
This is a fantastic film, and it's a little jewel of a movie. It's a real find. Tell me whose hands this film fell into first out of the two of you.
It actually fell into my hands first. My first film, Blink of an Eye, premiered at the Slamdance Film Festival, and when I was there screening Blink of an Eye, I happened to be sitting out in the lobby during the screening because I was too afraid to sit and watch the audience watch my film. And I picked up the script. It happened to be one of the winners of their screenplay competition. And it was Neo-Ned. And I just started flipping through it and fell in love with the script. And that very night I looked up the writer and sat down and we put together a deal to option his script.
Well, and what kind of fascinated you about it? It is a very outside of the box kind of premise. So what took you to it when you first read it? And tell us a little bit about the plot of the film.
Well, the plot of the film is basically it's just an absurd love story. It's a very unusual love story, and really it's just about, fractured individuals and how they deal with the world around them and how they find their way. Neo-Ned is the story of a neo-Nazi wannabe played by Jeremy that gets put in a mental hospital for a murder he didn't commit, but he claimed to have committed. In there he meets a black girl who is also pretending to be reincarnated or have the spirit of Adolf Hitler reincarnated in her. And these two characters meet in this mental hospital, and after some initial sparring, find out that they have more in common than they thought they had. And so this is kind of the story of their relationship. I think what drew me to the script the most, it's just, everybody who read the script kind of had the same response to it that I did, which is that it just touched on so many raw nerves, as you read it. You would find yourself reading along and laughing and somewhat enjoying and liking this despicable character, and then you catch yourself and go, wow, I can't believe I'm rooting for the Nazi.
Right.
And then you'd read some more and you'd get a little further into it, and you'd just double check again. It's like, wow, I can't believe I'm just rooting for this guy. And just really, I think that for me, I come from Washington State, and I grew up in a small town, and there was there was a lot of racial slurs that got tossed around, and race was definitely a big issue, and I think for me, I think that I saw a little of myself in this character, and it just kind of gave me the opportunity to kind of work through some of my own thoughts on racism and that sort of thing, and it really is different than anything I've ever seen. I mean, after my first film, I'd read a lot of scripts. I was on for several films, and man, I never saw anything like this. And naively, I read it and I thought, well, shoot, this will be easy. I'll just whip this thing out. We'll make this movie. We'll get it out next year, and it'll be fine. That was in, I think, 2001.
It's had a long journey, and I want to talk about that in a little bit. But as for your character, Jeremy, I mean, it's not a character we've necessarily seen before. He really pulls no punches, this guy. Tell me a little bit about Ned.
Ned, I filmed. That's why. the script I knew it had flaws, and it's why I liked it. And the character has a lot of flaws, and it's why I like Ned a lot. I tend to gravitate towards characters like Ned who are, I don't want to say despicable by any means, but they try to make somebody likable that does such despicable things, and it's always a challenge for me. And that's where I was initially drawn to it. And what's on the surface a lot of times is not really what's happening underneath. And to be able to play that either subtly or over the top is the fun part of it. You know, it's the execution.
Well, it's a remarkable performance, and I think the delicacy of the tone, and this probably applies to the entire piece, of finding the right notes for these characters. Because was the key kind of finding the humanity of Ned?
I think initially Dan and I both were like on the same page of there's such the absurdity of it without it being a farce by any means. It's just I gravitated towards this character. There's a lot of parts of Ned that are me, as in a lot of characters that I play, but this one in particular, the sense of humor. That's very close to mine, and not taking yourself too seriously and that sort of thing. And because I think the character doesn't take himself that seriously, and there's a really free-spiritedness about him, it makes him sort of likable. And I think the tone kind of is set with kind of his outlook on life and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And Van, it's almost set up almost like a joke with the punchline. You know, the white supremacist meets the African American
right.
in the mental institution that thinks that she's Hitler. But what shocked me about it was the depth involved in these characters in this story, and the believability of this relationship and what it gives both of them. Was that a tricky balance to find between the absurd, like Jeremy was talking about, and the other kind of tones you're going for?
Yeah, I think that excuse me. I think that what Jeremy was saying is that early on we both realized the absurdity of the log line of this film, and matter of fact, both of us, we've done many screenings of this film, and we all kind of cringe when we have to tell people what it's about.
Right.
But I think that what Jeremy and I agreed on really early on was that Ned had to be likable. That this was not going to be a fun film to watch if this guy was just disgusting and mean and rude and just not likable in any way. What I think that Jeremy brought to the role, I mean, I saw a dozen guys before I met Jeremy Renner, and I was discouraged. I couldn't believe I couldn't find anybody to play this role, and the few people I found who I thought could play it, by the time I got done explaining what I wanted from them, were scared of it. And I met Jeremy Renner, and within 15 minutes, I knew that he could play this role. He just, it's if you watch Dahmer and really look at what he has to go through in that film, he just brings this humility to these roles and to these characters that he just inhabits them. I mean, they just, through the entire movie, both Jeremy, we kind of joke because Jeremy basically became Ned, and I kind of became Ned's brother.
Right.
We really kind of just lived in that world, and I mean, Jeremy, he developed this little run that he had, and I mean, he just really became this person. And I think that in casting a film like this, you just had to be really careful and pick people who didn't have to really act, people who would more just literally become that character. I mean, you look at Gabrielle. I mean, she's a very strong personality, and it became a very interesting contrast to Ned's character. And you bring in Sally Kirkland and her personality, and you just start painting all of these different colors of this picture, and they all start just coming together. Because if anything would have been more acted or worked at, I think it would have come off as a farce. I think it would have come off as kind of a caricature of what it was. And with the actors that we got, it actually ended up becoming just this really involving story. I mean, it's amazing to watch audiences watch this film. I mean, they just get pulled in. It's just from Edinburgh to San Diego. I mean, it's just we've had the same reactions all over the world. It's just amazing.
I have a question from the chat room.
Go ahead.
Jeremy. What did you do to prepare for this part, for this character?
There was, I started like researching, going to these random websites and but it didn't make sense because he didn't really buy it. So as naive as I am to Nazis and all this thing and that sort of cult thing, it worked for me. So I avoided like studying up on the history of that and how it came about because Ned didn't know anyway.
Right.
So mostly it was very physical for me. It's a very physical part, and everything happened very quickly on it. We had just a very little rehearsal and jumped right into it, and it really is kind of like I learned every day something. And I locked into the first thing we shot was when I go to jail. You remember Van?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that's the first thing we shot, and I really locked in. The first scene really was just shaving my head, and then I remember dropping off all my belongings to go to prison for the rest of my life to be with my dad, and it was like checking into the Four Seasons. And most people would be freaked out to go to prison for the rest of their life, but just because I found that, and then I really just started discovering layer upon layer of like, okay, that's who this guy is. Who enjoys checking all this stuff and going to prison for the rest of their life? This guy is so happy. Like, not very many people are.
Yeah.
So then just that sort of mentality, there's not really much other preparation except, being open and learning and being true to the character and the circumstances of the script,
And I think that the other thing that Jeremy does is that he's definitely a method style actor. I mean, every single thing has to mean something to him. And
yeah.
And I mean, Jeremy and I became very good friends throughout the production of this film, and I mean, we shoved back and forth hard. He'd push me, I'd push him. Sometimes mentally, many times physically, and it really became a work in progress. Is that we had this great story, this great script, but our biggest fear all the way through was that it was a better book than it was a movie, and that we felt challenged to take what was on the page and put it in the film. And I think that Jeremy brings the same preparation to everything that he does. He's very thorough. He puts a lot of thought into what he's doing, and it's more, to me, it seemed more internal than external, in that he really brought on this character. I mean, I didn't know Jeremy that well, but I mean, his dialogue, as I got to know him in the years after the making of the film, I realized that wasn't really his exact voice. I realized that wasn't really his walk. I really realized that wasn't his manner. It was just these things that he created for this character of Ned.
Yeah, and when I think of you, Jeremy, this is turning into an all-out Jeremy love fest. But when I think of you, I think of the word fearless, because looking at this performance and looking at your performance as Dahmer, I mean, these are two roles that many other actors would run away from. But somehow you're attracted to these kind of characters.
Yeah.
And I'm interested. I definitely want to get back to Neo Ned, but the whole experience of Dahmer, playing Dahmer, what did you take away from that? How did you find your way inside of that?
That was both of those were Ned and Dahmer, my two most challenging jobs, and my most favorite, probably because of that. Ned was much more fun.
Yes.
Difficult, but just much more fun to be in. Shooting Dahmer was very difficult. We shot just because it was very little preparation, and this guy already existed, so there was that on top of it, and I didn't know much about him, so that probably helped. So I didn't have any judgments about who Jeffrey Dahmer was.
Right.
I think trying to make sense of that man was probably the most challenging, to find why does he do these things? What drives an individual to do A, B, C, or D sort of defines who they are. And he just happened to, do what he did. And I had to find, justify reasons why that happened, would it be abandonment issues, on and on. And there's 4 days of preparation, and we shot for 16 days, and we were done.
Wow, 16 days, wow.
16 days, yeah.
But it also speaks to something that Neo Ned speaks to as well. I mean, I find it hard to believe that anyone would argue that Jeffrey Dahmer was not insane. But right. There are questions as to what constitutes insanity or being crazy in this film, Neo Ned.
Yeah.
Tell me about that kind of exploration, either one of you.
Well, I think that this was something I don't think we set out to make a film that had a message in it. I think we just set out to make a great film. But through the process, I think that this sort of central message or theme sort of started to present itself, and that is that you really can't judge people by the color of their skin or their choice in religion or their choice of lifestyle. Even people who choose to become neo-Nazis are people. I mean, they're human beings. They're out there in the world, and one person might say they're absolutely crazy, while internally maybe they think they're completely normal, and I think the rest of us are crazy. The same thing with black versus white or any other divide like that. That I think that what this film really does is really makes you stop and think about that and what is okay and what is normal and what is right and what is wrong. I know when we screened this film, we actually were invited to screen down in Sarasota, Florida, as an opening event for a racial symposium they had. And Sarasota, it turns out, is one of the top 10 racially segregated cities in the United States.
No
and
kidding.
We screened this film down there, and I mean, half the audience was black. And every time something would be presented, there was a stereotypical racial slur towards the black people. You'd notice the black people in the audience just nodding, and that they could identify. And Jeremy will tell you, festival after festival, people would line up after the festival and come up to us and tell us that people have said that to them, whether it was a white person or a black person, or I've been in Ned's shoes, or I felt like that person that had those racial slurs thrown at them. It just really turned out to be a film that really makes you think about what is absurd, what is normal, what is okay, and what isn't okay.
Yeah. So the movie is called Neo Ned. It was released yesterday on DVD, correct?
Yes.
And so why the long wait, Van? I mean, this has been a kind of a long process.
Yeah. Well, we've had a number of false starts. We premiered at the 2005 Tribeca Film Festival. We thought we had the film sold. We didn't take any more festivals. We sat there and waited. 8 months went by. The deal didn't come together, so we jumped back out on the festival circuit. We went to Slam Dance, started winning awards. We won 3 or 4 audience awards and a bunch of other awards. And then it just kind of started to come together, and it was just a really tough pitch. I mean, most of the major distributors looked at this film, and they all said the same thing. We think this is a brilliant film, but we have no idea how to sell this to the audience.
Who's our audience? Yeah, who's our audience?
Who's your audience? And we're like, hell, we've been all over the world with this film. The whole world is the audience. Every demographic can identify with this film. At the end of the day, we couldn't find anybody who would put it out in theaters, and we really felt it deserved a theatrical release. We shot the thing on 35mm film. We did a skip-delete process on the negative to really create this sense of hominess in the mental hospital and this sense of awkwardness outside the hospital. So we really wanted to have an opportunity to be seen in that format. We did a very limited release, and just didn't have much luck. We just couldn't get the marketing for it. So it took us this long to find a DVD distributor who had the contacts that they had a automatic release deal where they had an automatic deal where it would go to Blockbuster, where it would go to Netflix, where it would go to Amazon, because none of these places would take it. I mean, Blockbuster didn't want it. But this company that took it, Code Black, has a release deal with them, and so they have an output deal, and so they had to take it. And so it's really funny because now that the thing is out, they're all sold out. It's on back order on Blockbuster. It's on back order at Amazon.
Oh, fantastic.
On Netflix, it's listed as an extreme long wait.
Among actors, he is a front runner for a nomination for this film, which we actually talk about in the interview. And it's interesting. I haven't told you, Jerry, how this interview started.
Okay, well, I think, do you want to surprise me, or?
Yeah, well, it's not part of the interview.
Okay.
I mean, it was the whole, I answered the phone, we said hello, and then a male voice in the background said, "Come back to bed, Jeremy." And Jeremy started laughing, and he said, "That's my buddy Sam Rockwell. He's trying to crack me up." I thought that was great.
Oh my God! You had both of them.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Okay.
So that was funny. But here's our conversation with Jeremy Renner about Kathryn Bigelow's The Hurt Locker, which opens in wider release this Friday. when you got this script, because I know Kathryn Bigelow really wanted you for it, when you got the script, did it scare you?
Scare me? Not at all. I had a very violent reaction, a very strong reaction after I read it. Normally, I can't get 20 pages in without falling asleep. This one I went front to back and then wrote, 3 pages of answers and questions because I was so curious and couldn't wait to get on the phone with Kathryn.
Yeah.
I wasn't afraid at all. It was just something I knew I couldn't wait to do. I was shooting actually 28 weeks later at the time. I was in London, and I really just wanted to start working on, James.
Well,
I was so enamored with it.
The reason why I asked you that is because, looking at your work and the characters you choose to play, you seem to be so fearless as an actor, and you tend to gravitate towards very complex and oftentimes kind of contradictory characters. And I'm curious what the appeal of James was to you.
Well, that would be that. Complex. It makes if it's almost three-dimensional on the page, it makes my job easier. But also that I love, to me, that's the enjoyment of acting. Is that I get to learn and grow and feel like I have something to offer. I don't know. I don't want to be bored when I go to work. Mm-hmm. I want to discover. The discoveries that I have when I get the chance to work is the most amazing payoff. As far as being fearless, I don't know how maybe, but it's not about being afraid or not, or being courageous. It's just I have a very strong reaction to, I guess, like you said, complicated roles. They just really interest me. I like, anti-heroes especially. I like flawed characters because to me it's realistic. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I'm pretty good at basing characters in truth because that's all I have as an actor. And, this particular role was, I couldn't have been more excited to do it. And still, when people ask me questions about it, I don't have all the answers. And I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah. Well, that's important, too, because a lot of times I hear actors say, and directors, that when you're building a character or building a piece, it's important to ask questions. And a lot of times it's more important to ask them than to answer them.
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
You have to have all the answers, but for James, I think every question I asked, I had I had answers. I just had to. Some of them were big character traits that I had to really focus on. Mm-hmm. First question I asked Kathryn was, how do you want people to feel, the audience, that is, when they come out of this movie? As James is walking into the sunset with his bomb suit back on, how do you want people to feel as a director? Mm-hmm. And she answered it to me. It's pretty much what I thought, and probably what people will feel. And that gave me the building blocks of like, okay, this is what this character is. I went on from there and just started building.
Yeah. I know that every role is different, but with this one, was there an aha moment, like a keyword or a concept that kind of unlocked it for you?
There are a few things. It was the bomb suit informed me a lot physically about the character. Music informed me a lot. That informed me about music on top of it, which gives me certain emotional fuel. Moments like with the Beckham, the kid in the movie, that informed me a lot of who James was. Having a child and wife back home, what that relationship was, informed me a lot. And probably the bump. I really was adamant about those. It was just kind of written as like just parts under my bed, and it became very important to me that I actually collected those, and it became out of respect for the bomb makers, and it added, I think, a really interesting aspect to the character versus just collecting trophies to it being, a chess game, and out of respect, it just deepened the character instead of being bravado, which is 2-1 note for me. So those sort of moments really help me define who the character was.
Well, I know you spent a lot of time actually talking to the EOD guys and going through some level of training with them, so your performance would be authentic in that respect. But they volunteer for this job. It can't be something as simple as an adrenaline rush that it gives them. What makes up these men?
Yeah, I think that's a cheap, easy way to go.
Yeah,
I think that's really cheap. I think why these guys do what they do is there's different reasons. To be honest, some were like a pay grade. Some were just like want to do something different than just be a soldier, or some. But what all EOD has is I guess what was really telling for me is what they do afterwards. Really, cause some of them really couldn't define why they were doing it, but they become civil servants. There's something very gratifying about knowing what you do in life affects people. And if you do it selfishly, if you do it because whatever the reasons why they do it, there's still something very gratifying about it. So, and they're all so smart. It's the opposite of really not the opposite of my character, but my character isn't the average EOD guy. So
right, your character's reckless.
A lot of the stuff that they would tell me, I couldn't really use. And then teaching me all the rules, I'm like, well, my character doesn't follow any of the rules. So I had to learn all the rules so I knew how to break them.
Right. And
so on and so forth. So, I mean, a lot of it was very informative, and they gave me so much, but I could only go off of, maybe 50% of what they were giving me.
You the guy in the flaming car, Sergeant James? Afternoon, sir. Yes, sir. You're a wild man, you know that? Yes, he's a wild man. You know that? Why don't I shake your hand? Thank you, sir. Yeah. How many bombs have you disarmed? I'm not quite sure. Sergeant. Yes. Asked your question. 873. 873. 873. They're counting today, sir. Yeah, that's got to be a record. What's the best way to go about disarming one of these things? The way you don't die, sir. That's a good one. That's spoken like a wild man. That's good.
The role is very physical, and I'm sure that's a lot of what you picked up from them. And I was reading an interview with Ms. Bigelow, and she was talking about the first part of training for you involved moving 200 paper clips.
Oh, yeah, that was part of the bomb suit training, which is, you put the suit on, and which people kept telling me how heavy it was and how difficult it was to move around and the whole thing. And they put it on me. I'm like, it wasn't so bad. I started to do jumbo jacks. I'm like, heck, I can handle this. And then now realizing, that like, here's a stack of paper clips. Now all I got to do is get on the ground, pick one up, get up, walk over 10 feet, and back down the ground, and just move the stack, essentially. And then after about 10 paper clips, I wanted to pass out. I'm like, okay, this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And then, half hour later, after, dragging a bot like 300 meters and, digging out a 155, which is about 50 to 75 pounds, and dragging that, it was arduous. It's the physical part, and that's the easy part. It's the physical. It's the mental thing that got really crazy. You dumb down about 25, 30 IQ points. Because by the end of all the physical training in the suit for about 45 minutes, you take the suit off and you do simple division on the chalkboard, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't. 7 goes into 49, and thinking like, I want a sandwich. That's my answer. I can't do it. It was so that's and what's interesting too, because the physical part was physical, but these guys, I met a guy who did 4 tours, and this guy had a big beer belly, completely out of shape. But it's mental toughness that these guys have.
Yeah.
Laser focus that sees any physical. The guy I trained with, don't get me wrong, he was built like a linebacker and, probably 2% body fat. But then there were other guys that were like, 5'2", wearing glasses, probably weighed $120. The suit weighed as much as they did, but could still do it. And it's a mental that takes over.
Any of those guys that you collaborated with, have they seen the movie? And if they have, what are their thoughts on it?
I do not know. That's a really good question. I would love to know, and I would love to talk to them about it.
Yeah.
I certainly hope they're happy. I know Kathryn's done some screenings for EOD. I just talked to a kid that's going into the Navy EOD, being shipped out here in a month, and he really enjoyed it. But I really care about the guys I trained with.
Yeah.
And hopefully I make them happy, because that's really important to us.
Tell me about the environment you're working in, because you shot in, I believe, Amman, Jordan, and you're not
Amman, Jordan,
not too far at times from the conflict in Iraq, the war in Iraq.
Yeah. Well, sometimes we're like 3 kilometers from the Iraqi border. But I mean, it didn't feel any more safe or less safe than, I don't know, if we were in Bakersfield, I suppose. I mean, that didn't really come into play. But the landscape certainly made it easy for us to feel like we were there and we were in it. I mean, really, to be honest with you, because of shooting in Jordan, which this movie would have not turned out if we did not shoot there, it was, to me, another character in the movie, a big character.
It really is.
And it really sort of, to me, there was no acting in the movie. It was all reacting to what our environment was. At the time, we didn't know if the people, and mind you, the sets were a square mile sometimes. There were just people wandering around, cats, goats, camels. We'd have no idea. Is this part of the movie? Is this not? We never saw a camera as far as they were hidden up on top of a building. Rarely would see Kathryn at times, and it felt like we're doing a little plays each week.
Yeah.
And, so we just had to react with what was given to us. And we trained, or I was so fortunate to train for nearly a year prior to shooting principal photography. And so I felt like, just kind of throw whatever at us, and then we'll try to make it work.
The thought really entered my head as I was watching it, in terms of the environment, that with every role, there's the preparation and there's the intellectual side of it that comes into play. But especially when you're put in that environment, the instinctual has to kick in.
Oh, yeah. All the intellectual stuff was before cameras were going, before anything, before even we were even close to principal photography. All that heady stuff, all the questions, all the intellectual stuff was done well before we started shooting. And then from there, it just became instincts.
Yeah.
And we made it best with what we had.
Tell me about Kathryn Bigelow.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
She's, again, I was able to spend a year with her and Mark, talking about this role and this character and this film. And, when I went to train, it was on my own, and I got to share my experience. It was, she invited me into this world, her film, and empowered me as an actor and as a human being to be the best I can be, because she trusted me. She didn't get in the way of me doing my job, and it helped her do her job. So she was so good about, making it feel like, even though she's the boss, she's the one in charge, it's her film, she's making it happen, but she certainly made it feel as if we all are in this together, as we were, and but that collaboration that she gave to me was a wonderful gift.
Yeah. And I was also very excited about the movie too, because you're one of my favorite actors, but another one of my favorite actors, Anthony Mackie, you're acting across from him. Could you share something about him? He's fantastic too.
He's so good, man. I mean, Brian Garrity as well. These two guys, I absolutely needed them as they needed me. We clung to each other because of the conditions we were in. Again, they're both very smart actors. Anthony, I only met not until I got to Jordan, even though I was very familiar with his work and very excited to work with him. And then, but you never know that someone can be such a great actor, but could be very difficult to work with. Mm-hmm. He is smart, easygoing, wants to get the job done, make it the best possible, and he'll give everything he's got. And he did, and he brings it every moment, every take. The guy's a genius to me.
You're getting a lot of talk about this film and possible Oscar consideration and that sort of talk. Can you conceive of that at all at this stage?
No, man, I can't. I surround myself with the things that are real.
Yeah.
Things that I take it like moment by moment, and I'd be remiss to look into the future and not really focus on the moment in the present that's happening now, and feeling so blessed and so fortunate that this movie, first of all, getting seen. Yeah. Before that even got finished, or even got made, really. And just, that it's being well received, awesome. That, hopefully people go see it, fantastic. So I just kind of take it moment by moment and kind of just enjoy this road, because it doesn't come around very often. Yeah. So and it's
the experience of it that means that is what means something. And after having gone through this experience, curious how you feel you're a different actor, or how you've changed as a person, even.
Probably a lot. I mean, just from that experience, shooting the movie, coming back was very hard for me.
Yeah.
And but I certainly got to take away a wonderful experience of my awareness about EOD, my awareness as an ignorant American California kid about the Middle East, about Arabic Muslim culture. And I wasn't sitting there like, oh my God, I'm skipping around. This is amazing. What a wonderful experience. But as I can now reflect, as I'm in my flip flops and shorts in sunny California, a couple years later, I'm like, that was an amazing experience. How lucky were we all to be able to do that? But would I want to do it again? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad I was able to do that. And but it certainly shifted me as a person.
Yeah. Before I let you,
as an actor, like maybe as an actor, meaning I'll certainly look a little bit more intently on where it's being shot, or I don't think I have the physical and mental, emotional strength to be able to do that again.
Right. Before I let you go, let me ask you about future projects. I saw Lightbulb at a recent festival. Yeah. I liked it very much.
Oh, cool.
So Lightbulb, is that on the horizon for release, and what else might be coming up for you?
No, I don't know. Last I heard, they're bouncing around doing the festival thing. Probably still looking for some distribution. So not sure where that's gonna go really. And as far as like another project, I'm just kind of waiting around. I'm being pretty picky anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of waiting for someone to bite at me, and really the decision isn't in my control. The decision comes down to the script that comes,
Yeah.
Where there's not a decision to be made. It's like, oh, I have to do this.
Well, I will watch anything that you're in. I think you're one of our great actors, and I appreciate your time so much.
Oh, thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
For fans of Antonio, you have a lot of Antonio this season, starting with The Skin I Live In, which reunites him with his longtime friend and frequent collaborator, Pedro Almodovar. The first time they've collaborated together in 20 years. And this is a deliriously deranged film. It's almost like his take on some kind of lush, lurid horror film in a way, and it's a delicious part too for Mr. Banderas, and he's great in it. In this conversation, we talk about Almodovar, his relationship, what he brings out in Antonio, and also speak a little bit about De Palma and everything surrounding that. It's interesting funny because I was waiting for the publicist to call me to put Antonio on the line. So I I didn't eat lunch yet. So I was sitting there, and I was like, all right, I'll just eat some like mixed nuts or something to stave me over until I get some lunch in me, so I don't get sick. So as soon as I put like a mouthful of mixed nuts in my mouth, the phone call comes through. So I'm like, I try to like chew or spit it out or whatever, and I'm picking up the line, and it was funny because as it happened, Antonio Banderas was going through the same thing.
Okay, cool.
So here is Antonio talking about The Skin I Live In, opens this weekend. Here he is. Enjoy, guys.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Banderas. How are you?
I am choking with a bagel right now, but I'm going to be okay in like 3 seconds.
That's such a coincidence because the second that she called me and I picked up her phone, I had a mouthful of food too. So we're in the same boat. I love this movie.
Thank you.
First of all, what I'm curious about from you, it's been about 20 years since you've worked with Pedro.
Right.
What does he inspire in you?
A lot of things. Pedro has been probably one of the most important persons in my professional life, and even in my personal life too, as a friend. You know, he gave me always unbelievable lessons. If we go back to the 80s, of course, you know, just to understand life and this profession in a totally different way, with the path that we follow in those years, breaking all the rules of Spanish cinematography and getting into places that nobody did before, not only just in the issues that he was treating in his movies, but also in the narrative processes that he used to tell them. What is an incredible satisfaction is just to find out that 21 years after we didn't work together, he continued being the same guy, that he essentially didn't change. He continues pushing the boundaries of himself, his personality, and turning the wheel a little bit harder. That he is not playing for mainstream audiences. That he's not trying to think about the box office. That he's just doing his thing always. And that in our days is kind of priceless, man, because everybody take out of the movies the peaks and lows and try to make things that are very eatable. And Pedro is not about that. It's not about that, and that is actually a lesson in itself. You know, the purity that he travels with all these years. And then you may like the movies or not. That's a different deal. It's just the way that he confronts, you know, everyday life and movies and you know, art in general. You know.
And he never compromises his own vision. I mean, you can see just frames of a film by Pedro, and you know it's his film. And I'm curious, as an actor performing for him, what is unique about the way he directs actors?
Well, he's different to anybody I worked before with. You know, it's just different. He owns completely the set. He's the leader, not only just of the acting, but of every chief of department, from the colors of the walls to the type of lights that he wants, the music, art direction. Everything is totally controlled. He gets really, really picky about all of these elements that he's using in his movies. And as an actor, also you receive the wave, you know, of a very strong opinion of what the character should be. And so it was like this time, you know, because on paper, when you read the script for the first time, and beside that, I was surprised, I laughed, I got scared, I got many different feelings that actually are very, very similar to the ones that audiences that are watching the movie these days are having, you know. The first intention when you see a character that's a psychopath is just to go big with him, you know. And he said, no, we have to actually keep him very economical and very, very, very laid back and very cold. So we, from that moment on, that we made those decisions, and he exposed them to me and gave me all the reasons to do so very clearly. It's almost like working in the world of quantum physics of acting, in little details, in universes that are very imperceptible for maybe other directors, but it's the world, the little details, in close-ups, in the way that you move your hands, in the way you walk, in the way that you move your face. It's everything. What you have to do as an actor is just to try to make that amount of information and data that he's giving you into something believable and as much as possible natural in a world that actually is not natural, because Almodovar described worlds that actually are very similar to the world that we live in, but is slightly off.
Yeah, and the worlds are very lush and lurid and kind of delightfully deranged that he creates. And I've always wanted to ask you this, because I've heard in previous interviews with Pedro that he said that he greatly admires the work of De Palma, and they have a similar kind of style, and you've worked with both filmmakers. Do you see a similarity between the two?
Between who? Pedro and who?
De Palma and Pedro.
Oh, De Palma. Yeah, well, yes, in a way, there is also... but think about something. I mean, De Palma is already very attached to Hitchcock. And I think probably that is the source of both directors being close in a way. But, the interpretation that they do of the same thing, of the same source, may be slightly different. But definitely movies like Body Double, Dress to Kill, movies like that in the Brian De Palma department, they have something to do with the universes of Almodovar in a way. But Almodovar also makes references to some other directors, some of them Spanish, and in this case, particularly in this case, I think he's very close to Luis Buñuel. For me, the atmospheric world of Viridiana is very close to what he has done in this movie. These kind of oppressive, overpowered characters that are actually eating each other, and especially one of them, the character that I play in this movie, I think is very, very close to some of the characters that I have seen with Luis Buñuel. But definitely, Almodovar makes references to many other styles and genres, directors, and that creates its own genre, in a way, the eclecticism. In a way, directors with such a strong personality as Almodovar, they are a genre in themselves. They are. Yes. It's just them. The personality is so strong that it's very difficult to actually compare fully with some others, because he takes references to many different directors This character that you play is a bit of a monster. So when I hear actors talk about playing quote unquote a monster or a character like that, they always say that it's important to find an empathy with that character to get into it. What was your path into that character? Well, though I may have had reasons to do so, because the character is coming with a backpack filled with tragedies. Mm-hmm. And that is a very easy way to empathize with the character. I mean, my wife died horribly. My daughter is in a mental institution. You just start feeling for the character at the beginning of the movie when we know a little bit of his story. What I try to do is actually detach from him. I couldn't establish a morality judgment of the character, because I realized very early on the rehearsal period that it was just too heavy on my shoulders to be carrying that during the whole process of making the movie. So what I try to do is just to compartment the character and try to make him almost like a family doctor. Basically, because what Almodovar asked me to do, he never wanted me to commend the character with the audience. He never wanted me to wink an eye to the audience saying I am the bad guy. And he wanted because this character thinks that what he's doing is no punishable. It's not against nothing. He thinks that what he's doing is absolutely natural, and in fact, the subject of his experimentation, he thinks, should be very thankful to him, because I am making her a better person than she was. Mm-hmm. That is the size of his ego and his mental game to play God. So what I did is just to be very specific in the days that we were working and try to establish almost like a puzzle that I didn't have to put together. I was just providing Pedro with pieces of the puzzle, and he was the one who was putting it together, and the narrative was in his hands. So, for example, the scene that I do with the dildos, right? Mm-hmm. For me, that scene is like I am prescribing pills to somebody. I was trying to get away from the fact of what I am doing may be funny, may be scary, maybe both at the same time. No. I'm a doctor who is telling you to take 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 3 at night with a glass of milk, and in 3 months you're going to be perfect. And that's it. That's what I was trying to do during the whole entire movie, just giving him this type of pieces of a puzzle that actually at the end he got to put together.
When you're doing that, when you're putting together, when you're giving him the pieces, and he's going to put it together in editing or in the final product, right. when you see the final film, being so intimately involved in the process of making it, did it still surprise you? What surprised you about it?
It did surprise me. It really did, and I was very thankful, actually, to Pedro's directions. Because in a way, when I see the whole thing put together, and I repeat this again and again, you may like it or not, whatever. But for me, personally, I knew myself, I saw myself playing something that I didn't play before. It's almost like Pedro made me play a note, that I didn't even know I had. And it was that kind of weird reaction, saying, "Oh my God, he's so cold with what he's doing. What he's doing when you see the whole entire movie together is monstrous, But I wasn't conscious of that monstrosity when I was working because of the specificity in which I was doing it. When you see the whole thing put together, it produced a very strong effect on me because you see that the character becomes almost like a wide screen in which you can write any fear that you have as a spectator can be just put in there. And I wasn't conscious of that at the beginning. It's absolutely unexpected, unreadable. When you're watching the character, you don't know what is going to be the next step that he's going to take. Undetectable in his psychology. And that creates... it's very chilly, in a way. But it's built, as I said to you, it was built. It was not built with the overall of the movie in my head all the time, and this is where I am going, but just putting together pieces.
The Landlord, Harold and Maude, The Last Detail, Shampoo, Bound for Glory, Coming Home, Being There. These are just some of the landmark films directed by one of the industry's most beloved and talented filmmakers, Mr. Hal Ashby. Now, thanks largely to the efforts of biographer Nick Dawson, actor Jon Voight, and Ashby's daughter Lee, we can add another treasure to that incomparable roster of films more than 20 years after Mr. Ashby's death. Mr. Ashby's comedy Lookin' to Get Out, starring Jon Voight, Burt Young, and Anne Margaret, was released to lukewarm reviews and box office receipts upon its release in 1982. But that release that they presented was a crippled, truncated version of Mr. Ashby's vision, having been overtaken and recut by the studio. But Ashby was determined to see his vision through. Prior to his death, he secretly recut the film to his own specifications and produced a print that has not been heard of or seen by the movie-going public until now. On June 30th, Warner Home Video will release the new cut on DVD, but in April, the film will enjoy its world premiere at the Sarasota Film Festival as part of a larger Hal Ashby retrospective and tribute. And word has it that this could be another masterpiece in Mr. Ashby's collection of timeless films. This is an amazing story about an amazing filmmaker and the unexpected final gift he has left us all. So let's get to our first guest. And what can we say about our first guest tonight? 4 Oscar nominations for Best Actor, one of which he won for his searing performance in Ashby's Coming Home. He's one of our most revered actors with a body of work that reads like a laundry list of some of the most influential films of our time. From Midnight Cowboy to Deliverance to Coming Home to Heat, Jon Voight's creative fearlessness, deep compassion, and humanity have marked every one of his compelling performances. And in this conversation, Mr. Voight chats with the Movie Geeks about his relationship with Hal Ashby, the warmth of their cinematic collaborations, and the poetic 27-year journey that their film Looking to Get Out made before it could be shown as Mr. Ashby intended. I wanted to start by asking you, before we get into Looking to Get Out, you had worked with Mr. Ashby previously, of course, a tremendous project, Coming Home, and I wanted you to give me a sense of what made him so unique as a filmmaker, and what made his sets different from the other filmmakers you've worked with.
Well, Hal, I have to say that when I was a young actor looking for the people to continue my career, and I got, of course, with Midnight Cowboy, I burst onto the scene, but I'd been around doing work on stage for a while and some television, but all of a sudden people recognized me from this great film, and which was directed by John Schlesinger at the top of his game, and he was a very great director, and so we had this great success. And then the other people at that time, there were as actors were coming forth, like Dustin Hoffman prior to myself, just one film prior.
Yeah,
he was a phenomenon when he came forth, and as it is today, there's discoveries almost every year, and I was one of those with Midnight Cowboy, and then there were directors as well that were suddenly coming to the fore at that time, and one of the ones that everyone had great regard for was Hal Ashby, and you're always thinking, well, maybe I can work with Hal one day, and as it turned out, we would see each other every once in a while, but I never really got to know him well, but always had this great feeling about Hal. And then when we finally came down to it with Coming Home, I pursued the role that I finally did get, but they were considering me for a role that Bruce Dern finally did.
Yeah.
And so I was in discussions with Hal Ashby, with Waldo Salt, who was the writer of Midnight Cowboy as well as Coming Home, and Jerry Hellman, who was the producer of Midnight Cowboy as well as Coming Home. But this is the first time I would be working with Hal Ashby. And Hal was the most, what can I say about him? Of course, when you meet somebody that you admire, there's always a little intimidation. You're deeply honored to be with them. You're hoping that things go well with your collaboration, and you're looking for the ways you connect. And with Hal and Hal was very quiet, didn't say a whole bunch of stuff, was, I would say, shy of a lot of attention, but he was extremely bright and full of good humor, a unique sense of humor, a little on the dark side maybe, but really was really funny, and he was a very loving man.
Yeah.
He cared for everybody. He cared especially if he was very sensitive to people who were hurting, and very sensitive generally. So working with Hal, as I got to know him more and more, we became collaborative in Coming Home. He would come to me with suggestions early in the morning, and I would respond with some of the things I was sitting up at night thinking about, and we'd put things together in the scenes that we shot on a daily basis, and because of the circumstances, a script that wasn't quite finished, we had this need to do it, but then we had the joy of doing it. I would always be happy to see Hal coming toward me, and I think that it was mutual, and we would pepper this piece with lots of ironic humor and passion.
Yeah.
So we seemed to work well together. We were, as they say in our world out here, we were good chemistry for each other. We had fun working together, and when that happens, it's always a good sign. And we were able to say and do things together that I think were daring sometimes, and unusual always.
Yeah.
So that's why Coming Home was the way it was, and it bore his his signature very very beautifully. I thought
it really did. It really, and all of his films, and all the qualities that you just described, that you found in him, the loving nature, the concern about others, and the kind of the warm heart. You can see that in his work, and it's a beautiful legacy of work. That's why it's very exciting that we're getting to see the previously unseen cut of Looking to Get Out the way that he wanted it shown. But tell me about when you first received the script, or this project came to you. What were your thoughts about it?
Which script?
Looking to Get Out.
Looking to Get Out was born of, it had a little bit of an interesting history. My brother, Chip Taylor, and he changed his name from James Wesley Voight to Chip Taylor when he got a record contract at 16 with King Records in Harlem. He was a young singer-songwriter, and they were looking for a Rick Nelson type. And in those days, they thought about changing names. When I came along, I didn't want to change my name, and none of my peers did either. But at that time, they were still in that kind of thought that, you change your name. And since they were looking for a Rick Nelson type, they wanted a Rick Nelson name, and Chip Taylor was what they came up with. So my brother had this name, and he had some success. He had a very big success with a song called Wild Thing. He wrote Wild Thing.
Wow.
And actually his demo was what the Trogs used, exactly note for note. If you played Chip's demo record, and you played back-to-back with the Trogs' interpretation of it, you would see there was absolutely no difference whatsoever. So he could have had a hit on that if it had been distributed and advertised properly. But anyway, that's the way things go in the business.
Yeah.
And he had this huge hit. And anyway, we were a close family. I have a brother that's a volcanologist who's rather world-known. And we were all three very close growing up, and continue to be through our adulthood. But anyway, Chip passed me 33 pages of a script that was being written by his buddy and a buddy of mine too. His name was Al Schwartz. And Al was a character in our lives, a very interesting guy. Used to be a stunt man, was a Korean War veteran, gunner in B-25s, and then had this stint in the music business where he was managing different acts and stuff. He was a very interesting guy, and a guy I liked very much, had a good sense of humor. I guess that's part of maybe an identifying factor in my friendships. We do a lot of laughing, but he presented Al's 33 pages to me. And the 33 pages, he said, there's something to this, and I looked at it, and there was indeed some kind of signature, some originality, and something in the dialogue that was very special. And I looked at it, and the story wasn't there yet, and so I encouraged him to keep working at it. And as it turned out, I worked with him, and finally became a co-writer, really, because I would work with him on a weekly basis until it was finished. And then we couldn't get it made. And I was doing this really for Al because I thought it was I thought he should get some attention for this work. Finally, there's a story connected to this, but I at one point said, I'm going to get this thing made. I'm going to take it to my friend Hal Ashby, and Hal liked it, and we set off to do it. And then we had all sorts of drama in the making of it, and in the final stages, Hal was not able to finish the film, so there was some damage done to the film, and it came out in a crippled form. So unfortunately, nobody ever saw the film in a proper state.
So the studio took and did their own cut of it. That was
they
released.
interceded. They said 15 minutes has to come out, and Hal walked away, and they did the 15 minutes, and it was it was not helpful. And then I tried to fix it, but couldn't fix it, and if you take 15 minutes out of almost anything, you're going to hurt it. But in this case, the film they had a date, and they had to make the date, and I understood their concerns, but also the damage had been done. So,
wow.
So we didn't have a happy ending to our journey until most recently, when we discovered that Hal had cut the film before his passing and had taken this cut and given it to UCLA
without telling
anyone. Now there's backstory to that. I understand all the motivations. I can figure it all out, but it really was like a message in a bottle sent out to sea.
Yeah.
And that was lost until a year and a half ago, almost 2 years now, when a young Scottish writer by the name of Nick Dawson, who had fallen in love with Hal's work, and he was 26 years old, but quite a lot more mature than 26 years old would indicate. Yeah. And he called me up and he said, "John, I'd like to interview you. I'm doing a book on Hal Ashby. I'd like to get some of your insights." And I said, "I'd sure be delighted to talk about Hal." And then he showed up at one point, and he actually showed up. I mean, there's even another aspect to the story that's quite unique. And he said, he called me from San Francisco and said, "I'm in San Francisco." This was a couple of months after he talked to me initially, and he said, "I'm up here in San Francisco. I'm coming down a couple of days." I said, "That's great." He said, "May I bring with me Hal's daughter?" I said, I didn't know he had a daughter. He said, "Well, he did have a daughter, and she was trying to get in touch with him during her lifetime. They almost met several times, but they never did meet. But it would be nice for her to hear stories about her dad." I said, "Isn't that wonderful?" I said, "Look, I'm very sorry I didn't know about this, because I was close enough to Hal that I definitely would have been able to get them together. So let's have her come along. We'll have some fun." And they came, and she turned out to be this young woman, Lee Ashby McManus, and she's an older woman, and she's now, she's not a kid, and she's had a couple of children herself, and she's a terrific gal, and it would have been so nice for Hal to have had that connection, but there were reasons in his background why that would have been a difficult thing, and maybe the whole story may come out one day. But anyway, they came down and they started talking about how much they loved Looking to Get Out, and I said, and I asked Lee, I said, "Why was it?" She said, "It's my favorite film." I said, "Why is it your favorite film?" She said, "Because I think the girl in it, the little girl at the end, who was played by Angelina Jolie as a little baby, 4 years old, was me." And I thought about it, and I said, "Yes, it's very possible that it was you." So I remember the discussions we had, and we were thinking of going with a little boy, but Hal wanted it to be a girl. And so I remembered those conversations. And then Nick Dawson said it's one of my favorite films as well. And I said, "Well, where did you see it, Nick? Did you see it in DVDs, or what would you see?" He said, "No, I saw the cut that he left UCLA." I said, "What?" He said he left UCLA a version, and that's the one I saw. And when I heard that, the first question I asked him, I said, "Tell me how it begins. Can you tell me how it begins?" Yeah. Describe the opening, because we had several versions, and Hal had shot a lot of stuff beyond the script in the beginning, and I never thought when we were working on it that stuff applied. I thought we could have started where we started in the script, which is Alex picking up the car, but we never got a version like that that started in the proper way and was edited tightly and all of this. And I knew cut for cut what it was, each cut. That's one thing I can remember. If I see, especially one of my films, I know every cut, and I know what's on the cutting room floor as well. So I said, he described it to me, and I said, "That's a new version." And then I said, "Well, let's go see it." So we called up right then, that day. I said, "Let's call up UCLA and let's go down and take a look." So I said, "Let me call Al Schwartz, my buddy, and let's see," because he'd love to see it. And sure enough, we went to see it, and we sat there, and I said, "Let's put up a reel." we put up the reel, and the kids at UCLA said, "Oh, this is a great film. We play this every once in a while. We love this film." I said, "Is that right?" Huh. So I said, "Let's see the first reel." So we looked at the first reel, and sure enough, it was a new cut, something I hadn't seen before, and it was very well done. The first time I had seen that section as well done as it was, you know. Then I said, "Let's put up the second reel." So we put up the second reel, and sure enough, every cut was, you know, terrific. When each scene had been adjusted, too. It wasn't like I was watching. Some sequences had been in the original, but you know, for whatever reason, the build from scene to scene was never right. You'd get thrown off here and there. This one just kept us going, you know. So he touched every little sequence, went back and recut, found other takes, made strong differences in the cutting, and it all looks very natural. You would never know that it wasn't shot just exactly that way. So I saw the two reels, and I was frightened that I would come to the third or fourth or fifth reel and the thing would fall apart. But I said, "Look, let's not spoil this because it's fragile. It's just one piece of film. It's a rough cut. It's a work print. Let's show it to Warner Brothers, who owns it now, and let's see if we can get a DVD made of this. But let's see it in that circumstance. Let's invite everybody and have a little screening." So we invited some of the Warner Brothers people. They said they'd like to see it. We invited the kids from UCLA and a couple of others. Burt Young joined us. I couldn't get in touch with Annie at that time, but my producer, our producer, Bob Chaffel, was there, and we sat and we saw it, and we saw it reel for reel. Every reel held up right through to the end credits, and it was just wonderful for me to see this creation of ours. And so Al was overjoyed, Bert was overjoyed, I was overjoyed, and everybody in the room was happy with the film. So it was an exciting moment for us all. And then immediately Warner Brothers said, "We're going to release a DVD on this." So that became, and by the way, Nick Dawson was there, and Lee Ashby McManus was there as well. So we had a wonderful, it was a real celebration, and Nick, and then Nick called me a couple of weeks ago actually, and said, he's going to have this. He's got the Sarasota Film Festival, so we arranged for them to have a copy of the DVD. With the first copy, they'll be showing it in the theater. I don't think they'll show the film. I think they've cleaned up the DVD, so we'll have a projected DVD. I think now maybe
it's it's a high definition transfer, DVD. I believe. Yeah.
So it'll be a very nice piece, and it'll be the first time. It's a premiere.
First time. That's amazing. That's amazing. So tell me about this journey. It seems like you've come full circle. So many have come full circle with this process.
Yeah.
It's almost poetic in a way. What has this meant to you?
It's a big deal for me because of many reasons. But one is that this film, which was not received well, will have its proper place in Hal's legacy.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful. It is a Hal Ashby film. It's a very, very good Hal Ashby film. This will take its place now, and for me too. I like this film very, very much, and it's one of those films. It's a comedy, obviously, and at the base, and it's got a lot of other stuff in it as well, but it has some thrilling stuff and very extraordinary stuff filmically, and in the acting department, and there's stuff that's kind of classic stuff within this film. See, so I have a feeling that people will be walking around saying some of the words from this film because the language is very vivid and fun, and also it fulfills my legacy as well.
Yeah.
So it becomes a portrait that I can be very proud of.
Well, as a film
and
lover,
I think the same thing is true of Anne, and the same thing is true of Burt Young. Certainly, Burt Young is wonderful in this piece.
He is terrific. Let me tell you, as a film lover, the project feels like a real gift to me. So
nice of you to say that.
I cannot wait, and I hope to meet with you during premiere night.
Yeah, great, Jamie.
Mr. Voight, I really appreciate your time. I'm a great admirer of yours, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you, Jamie. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.